Have you been up here to Tide when we have our festival in January? Okay, then I know.
There were too many people around his table to get up to. No, on do not disturb here. Hang on.
I don't know what it is. They're looking for.
You're good on TV, Chris. I should have done that beforehand. Sorry about that.
Yeah, Mike. Good. Better
There's a lot of traffic coming on the way from the Boils Parish.
no. A lot of rain coming.
Oh, you got rain just now? You had rain on the way here?
No, but it's right out of the
Rain
I
heavy.
brought my umbrella in, I could take care of it. Keep it away.
Okay, it's time to start. Our tire is Chris Williams. He's from Buffalo, New York. That's in New York. And he's been living in Sorrento for how long now?
Oh, I've been in the Baton Rouge area since 2009, so a little over a decade in Louisiana now.
He's got a website called the Fat Fingered Fly Tire. It's got a lot of good information on it.
Appreciate it.
So I've been prowling around on it.
Well, if there's things I can add, please let me know. I like projects on my days off, but yeah, I appreciate you guys having me. As Mike said, originally from Buffalo, so I grew up a trout fisherman and smallmouth bass fisherman, but been a converted redfish and speck guy for the past, well, about 20 years. I lived in Florida and Texas and a few other places before I settled in Louisiana. Fly fishing wise though, I've only been back here maybe doing it strong about 5 years. So this is somewhat new to me, although I did start tying probably at about the age of 8. And just took about a 10-year hiatus in the middle of it.
Can't hear.
Can't get the sound.
Bit of time for that. But to start out, go ahead, hook in the vise, and we'll just make a tiny little thread base immediately behind the eye of the hook and go ahead and trim our tag off. So for those on Zoom, guess we didn't have some audio. We're just setting up a thread base right behind the eye of the hook. We only need to go back about 1/8 of an inch. We're just building that up before we tie on our bead chain. So how are we doing? Everybody good on that? Good, thumbs up. All right. So next step, once we're ready, we'll go ahead and take those tiny little bead chain. Be warned, they're easy to drop and lose on the floor. I was telling Mike before, I'm pretty sure my dogs have eaten more of these than they should at this point. Hoping my wife doesn't watch this. She is a veterinarian. But we'll go ahead and just immediately on top of that thread base, we'll use some cross wraps and we're going to tie in that bead chain. Ideally, if you go a little heavier than this, the bead chain will orient the hook up. At this weight, it really only just causes it to dive below the surface a little bit. So again, slow sink streamer, if you're fishing real shallow over some oysters, you may want to go one size up on the bead chain just to make sure it flips the hook and you keep that hook point up so you're not snagging every cast. That is up to preference. I keep it pretty close to the eye. I got a tiny space on this one, but that just happened to be where my fingers happened to lay the bead chain down. Hey.
We're still waiting on the bead.
Yep, no problem.
Yeah.
I think he got some extras up there.
Do you use 2 sets of beads or just one?
Just one set of beads. You have a,
Here, we all got a set here.
No. I'm fixing to go back over there and see what's going on. Yeah.
I knew some others.
No, he doesn't. No.
You
I had 2 sets.
He's
Get
got
extra.
it.
Okay, I'm good. Thanks.
That's it. Yeah, he said he's got his own little special relationship with the Lord and he's comfortable with it. And so I'll just let him have that.
I have done this before, looking for. Must be for a Lego piece, right? Is that what you're looking for, a little Lego? Little cars, little cars. There we go. Those little cars that are deadly on your feet when you're carrying, that's why you never be barefoot when around Grandchildren. It's little stuff on that. Christian, when you tie your bead chain, do you go back and forth? How much do you put on your bead chain?
3 or 4 cross wraps is usually enough, yeah. And I know, again, if you're using this to orient the hookup, you may want to put a dab of super glue on as well, just to make sure they don't shift back and forth as they will. In this case, again, it's so light, it's just to get it below the surface and won't make a huge difference. Other than larger bead chain, you can also try a strip of lead-free wrap along the top of the hook shank, and that'll help get it down as well. It won't really orient it one way or the other, though.
Yeah. Well, I know, I appreciate that. I'm fixing to take off up there.
Everybody good? Still working on it?
I might just pack my bag and stay with you. All right. That's all right. I sleep on the couch. Well, I'll let you know tomorrow what happens. How's your bride? She making progress?
Either right up against or just barely back. I mean, if you have a little gap, it'll allow you to kind of whip finish in front of it. If not, I mean, if you knot it off right over there, it's not going to hurt it either. In this case, it's a bit of weight and it doesn't serve much more of a purpose than that.
Go wherever you want. I'm going to White River.
I'm going down the river. Thanks, Jim.
Thank you.
And you think that's got so leave this around with the, what they call it, the happy bag or something like that.
Good. All right. So if everybody's ready, next step, we're just going to continue our thread base all the way onto the bend in the hook.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
And go ahead and go just a little bit past the bend. We're going to go ahead and tie in the eyes from here. So we want to angle those up. So if you can get your thread to that point, it'll give you a good starting point.
It's gonna be looking both ways.
Like I said, that bead chain is just a little weight to get it down. It'll be almost
Yeah.
covered by your dubbin loop in the end.
Why is this anyway? Is it yours?
No, this is a generic offtake of one of the EP Fly series. So they actually make a whole bunch of brushes that avoid the wraps the actual loop we're going to work with. There's
an Italian name.
Yeah, it's Enrico Puglisi. I can never remember the last name, but yes, correct. They have a brand. So the guys behind the EP Minnow. So they have an entire series of flies they've done. And essentially this just became a style after a while where everybody has their own shrimp, the way they tie it, and they all just fall into that category. So, generic shrimp is the best way to look at it. But great advertising for the EP guys, since everyone just calls them that. Oh, yeah, I'd say so.
I just watch videos of the time.
Oh, absolutely.
Pretty cool.
All right. So how are we doing on the thread base? Still wrapping? Okay. Good. All right. So next step, we're going to take those little black eyes, the pre-made shrimp eyes that we had, and we're going to go ahead, aim the eyes down the shank of your hook, line up that little plastic base to the Y along the bend, and go ahead and just wrap that down as tightly as you can, right up the bend of the hook. And ideally, when you're done, you'll have something about like that if you guys can see it on the screen.
So the eyes go away from the bend?
Correct. Yep. The eye should point down off the back of the bend. And if they somewhat just point straight off the back of the bend, that's fine as well. I tend to angle mine down just so they stick up a little bit above the nose of the shrimp. And for those who have it, this isn't a bad spot to use super glue. These things will pull free after a couple of fish otherwise, and it doesn't seem to hurt if you lose the eyes, but if you took the time to tie them in, you may as well keep them.
Yeah, that's a
Flash next.
I'll tie, I usually tie this and then the crystal flash below it. So I do craft fur and then the crystal flash, so sit like that. And the crystal flash will sit like that under it.
Okay, so on top.
Yep, so, yeah, so sit on top, yes, correct.
It doesn't fish upside down.
It hit or miss which way it goes. I tie it so it'll orient, but yeah, that's what I was saying. It doesn't really matter which way you put the eyes in the strainer.
That's what I'm back there.
Gotcha. We good on the eyes, guys? We're good. All right. Okay, so next up, we're going to go ahead and tie in our craft fur. So this is a little bit up to personal preference. This is great craft fur and a lot longer than what I normally get. For my purposes, when I'm tying these small, I'll measure out something maybe about 2 times the shank length. You can go 3 times if we're going to tie a little thicker or longer dubbing loop on it, which I know Flip and Mike did in some of their practice ones. So this will be preference how big you want your shrimp. Either tie in 2 or 3 lengths of craft fur from the bend in the hook. Go ahead and we'll just clip a chunk off.
It's not a pencil thickness, and at the measurement for everything, it says a pencil thickness. I don't know where you get the pencils they use.
Yeah, I just wing it and it's a preference thing. All the,
Kindergarten pencil or?
I don't know, they always say, always.
So once you've gone ahead and cut that, go ahead and we'll tie it in right at the bend in the hook. I was gonna say, keep your finger on the far side of the hook, opposite the way you're wrapping if you can, and that'll help from it spinning around the hook shank as you go. Go ahead and secure that on with a few loops. And you can go ahead and trim any excess off the back there, or just wrap over it depending how much you have. I say it'll add a little bulk and not gonna hurt anything if you go that route.
How long do you like to make it?
2 to 3 shank lengths.
The one we need to comb the under fur out.
With this, I'll pull a little under fur out if I'm worried about it. This stuff hasn't been too bad, actually. When I've cut it off at the length I have, there hasn't been a great deal of under fur in the part I've pulled off.
Are we tying it in right in front of the,
Yep, so right at the bend in the hook. Go ahead and tie it in straight off the shank on top. What's that? I was gonna say, you'll have to check with Bill. I don't remember what color. What was the color for the craft fur? Do you remember? Was it just the tan?
Yeah.
Is it the,
See how they come out?
is that might be your ice dubbing mixed in with it.
That's probably what it is.
Yeah, I think your ice dubbing probably mixed in.
And that look good.
Build character.
So that's dubbing in there. That makes it good.
Yep, that would be the shiny stuff. Guys. All right. Everybody doing good?
Are you just gonna have one strand?
All right, so everybody ready for the next step? Nice and easy. We're just gonna take our crystal flash, fold it in half, and we're gonna go ahead and tie it in right on top of that ice stub. We have just one piece here. If I'm using the mid-size pearl flash, I'll tie in 2 or 3 of these, but no. So just go ahead and tie it in just on top. It should be just a little bit longer than the craft fur nose on the shrimp. So if you fold it in half, that'll probably work just about perfect for this.
Let you know we're about to lose another old Ferguson.
And again, add more if you want more flash. It just kind of all matters what the water looks like when you're using it. Yep, and if you're tying the more heavily weighted lead eye version of this, where it kind of hook points up and it sits up a little bit in the water, a lot of guys on top of these will actually put in a couple rubber legs as well. So this one, the way we're using it, I haven't found the rubber legs to help, so I haven't bothered, but this would kind of be the point you start tying those in if you were looking for some.
Where do they put the rubber legs?
Usually right behind this, they'll tie in the first set right behind the craft fur on either side, start the dubbing loop, and then possibly tie in a second set afterwards, usually on,
That's why I posted it. I figured the people that knew me and knew him would know why.
All right, so everybody ready? Good, all right, so yeah, I'll take one of those and we'll. I may not, but I'll have it here so we can show people what we're doing if we do that route. Thank you.
Anybody wants a 3x5 card, just raise your hand.
All right. So this is how they've done the dubbing loop before, I guess, is, yep. So we'll talk about both ways to do this as we do it. I usually don't, but we'll try it both ways on this. So next part, I know you guys have done dubbing loops with a few things. Start out, we're gonna go ahead and make a loop about 4 inches. So if you wrap a little bit forward down the shank of the hook, and then slide a whole bunch of thread out of your bobbin. We'll go ahead and wrap it over. Whether or not you guys can see that on Zoom, I don't know. And we're gonna wrap back with our thread.
About a 4-inch loop.
About a 4-inch. If it's longer, I just cut it off once I tighten it down anyways. So I went a little bit bigger, for example, on this one. We'll go and wrap back over it with our thread.
Go right behind of the.
I'll usually stop maybe an 1/8 of an inch from the craft fur, but you can wrap all the way up to it. It depends on, I guess, how bushy of a body you want on the shrimp.
So where do you want the loop, the dubbing loop to start?
So you can start anywhere from right behind the craft fur to about an 1/8 of an inch forward from that. Does that make, sorry, right in front of the craft fur. Yeah. And again, where you start will just depend on how kind of thick of a body you end up with on it. Right, so I will wrap all the way up to essentially where my bead chain is and just secure it usually either right behind or right in front of the bead chain. So yeah, for those of you who have your loop, make sure you wrap your thread forward and just leave it right behind the eye of the hook to keep it out of the way once we do these next couple steps.
That's a. It's a good tool. Yeah, like that, just like that. Go right ahead. All right, now go back up and wrap it before that. What did you just do? See, you're gonna have to open it up like this. Yeah. Oh, yeah. This does. Oh, yeah.
All right, does everybody have their loop forms? All right, so if you have it, go ahead and apply some wax to the loop. It'll make it a little easier, but it's not necessary if you don't. Anybody wants to borrow this, they're welcome to if they don't have any. Here. You know, that wax may be older than I am.
I've got some wax,
That-
probably over 20.
That was in a box donated to me by a retiree back in probably 1996. So, yeah.
That's about the time I started time.
Yep, and that's- Yep, and it looked about like this when he gave it to me, so I think he had it for at least a decade. Okay. Perfect. Thank you. You're welcome.
Don't sneeze.
All right, so we'll take a little time on this, couple different ways. So I'll show you what I do first, then we'll talk about what Mike said he'll do in this regard. Is when I do this, I mix about even amounts of kind of craft fur, just trimmed out of the base of what we cut our beak of our shrimp from, the EP fibers, and then some ice dub, which you guys should have all in the pack. A little bit of flash Jim found there. So when I do this, I will just mix it, clump it together, and I will go ahead and I will pin it in the loop. If you do it this way, you're gonna have to pull it tight, attach hackle pliers or a dubbing loop tool, which a few of you have, and then spread it. What Mike has suggested that I've never done before, but seems great, is you can go ahead, lay a index card flat, spread out your material over the length of it, and then holding your dubbing loop horizontally, ideally you can just slide this right into your loop, and you won't actually have to spend as much time spreading it out once you get it in there. So, didn't quite do it right there, but ideally you do that, pull it tight, and
Supposed to have some of this purple stuff in it.
yep, you want some of the ice stub there to add a little flash to the body. So using Mike's technique, it's already nice and spread. You can spread it a little more if you need to. So if you don't have hackle pliers, if you don't have a dubbing loop tool, I have used my whip finish tool before. You can use a spare hook, just something to secure the thread and pull it taut for the next step.
That works, but I'm using the. See what it's for, do with that. You know.
Yours looks better than mine, Mike. Feels that way sometimes.
No one has an exterior view.
Trust me, I do not. So the secret way to get around this is they actually sell things called dubbing brushes, which are this stuff pre-spun on wire. And you just tie that to the shank of the hook and wrap it around and clip it off. They are a little pricey, but if you're making a bunch of these, it makes it a lot quicker.
Yeah, I tried building one that was off cost.
I'll show you later. I've seen there's a really nice table somebody has to make those now. That's not too bad.
Use some different kind of.
So yep, a few people have started, but at this point, once you've got your stuff spread out in there, go ahead and start twisting your thread. So we're gonna
do two, we're gonna do this twice.
One should be enough to cover the whole shank. These are kind of a short hook shank. So if you get about 3-4 inches of material on it, but we're gonna go ahead and twist the thread, and the goal here is it's really going to cinch in that material so it doesn't pull out. Otherwise, you can have a pretty naked fly after a couple of fish. But the actual dubbing tools make this really nice. Anything else is kind of awkward, but you can get through it.
I showed you that other way.
Check that out.
Now, what's your, that's partially done. Now, it didn't do anything. So I'm gonna let it go right here, and this is cold. So now,
All right, so does everybody have a loop somewhat twisted up now? Looks like it. So at this point, it's gonna be a bit of a mess, and a lot of it's gonna probably be stuck in the loop. EP fibers aren't as bad. The craft fur and some of the ice dub is gonna be a problem. You can either use a bodkin to pick it free, or in my case, I've got an old beard comb I got a hold of and added to my kit. And I'll simply do this, and it does a pretty good job of knocking the loose fibers free and also pulling anything that's stuck in the thread loose. And ideally, you're looking at some sort of mess like this once you're done. So I have a whole bunch of extra thread here before my actual dubbing loop starts. So I'm just wrapping it to get it out of the way before we actually start looping it around.
this place. Seen that already?
All right.
This is what, it's not. Good structure though.
Yeah, he's getting it down.
No, I can't get this so out.
Yeah, I used to.
Well, that is the EP fiber we got. Yeah, it's a mix of all of them is what I have in here. Oh, I used about a third of it in mine. I kept it a little sparser and used some of the craft fur mixed in. All right. So I was gonna say, yeah. That's good. All right. So how are we doing on the loops? You guys ready for the next step? Okay. Good. Looks like it. All right. So final thing we're gonna do here is we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna start wrapping this loop. So if you got a rotary vise, you can spin the vise, hold it in place. If you don't, go ahead and just start wrapping it around. And with each loop, go ahead and pull the fibers towards the bend in the hook. And we're essentially just gonna wrap the fibers, one wrap over the other as we move forward toward our bead chain.
So,
want to end up right behind the tree.
Right, so you can end up right behind the bead, or if you have a bit of a gap, it's not gonna hurt you to wrap right over the bead and finish right behind the eye of the hook. It's really up to how much material you have to work with.
I might need to put a little more depth in my loops.
That means easy enough to make an extra loop and keep going too if you need to do that. So once you get to the end of your loop, you'll go ahead, a couple of wraps with your bobbin around it to secure it, and you can trim off whatever excess you have. Not on Facebook. I have Instagram. I have Instagram, but not Facebook. So
Our club has two sites, catch maintain.
Yep.
And then we have another one, Kisatchie Fly Fishers. That's a share.
oh, really? Okay.
So, and that is, administered by. Orders our dog. She knows our members. But she maintains that one, and all she wants is people who have questions about where to go, pictures of their fish they're catching.
Okay, just share.
Yeah, just share stuff, exciting things.
It's already pretty good.
Yeah, some inquiries about where to go, who's a good guy.
Okay.
That's what they're looking for. Those
Yep, excellent.
love for it. And I guess Facebook and Instagram kind of.
I think there's a way. I don't 100% know, but I'll try to figure that out. Sounds like a worthwhile thing.
Honduras in May on mission trip, and one of the girls in our group is 18 years old, she showed me how to do it.
Okay. Excellent.
She's Honduran.
Wow. All right. So how's everybody doing on their loops? Did they work out for the most part? So, yep, at this point, half hitch or whip finish. Add a little bit of, Flex Seal or UV resin, whatever you prefer to use. Lock it in and make sure it's fine. And you essentially have a finished product. It's just a matter of trimming that dubbing loop if you want to shape the body. And that really is up to personal preference and what you want the actual silhouette of the fly to look like. In this case, about like that is what I'm looking for on a body, but if you want something thicker, you can leave it that way. If you need to brush it out, go ahead and do that before you trim it.
Clear the hook area or?
I usually I usually have my loop short enough that the hook stays somewhat clear.
Okay.
But it should, even if it's covered, it should clear out eventually. Thank you.
Yeah.
Couldn't see behind me. Appreciate that. That's about how I normally tie it. Again, compare it to the winter size one. A lot bigger in the summer than February, January timeframe.
It's a small body.
It is, but you'd be amazed how the big fish go for it.
I know that. Almost cousin Ben, he was a cruise. He stayed in one. Yeah.
So how'd yours turn out?
Sir?
I was just seeing how it turned out there.
Oh, it's not very.
That doesn't need to be to catch fish.
But it's a good worm.
Oh, that'll fish just fine.
Yeah.
I say that body, even if it puffs out a little bit, as soon as it gets wet, it's going to taper down and you can take that shape you want. So.
What hook is this?
I use the Gamakatsu SC15s. This is the Mustad equivalent. I can't remember exactly what the number is.
Short shank.
Yeah, really short shank. Bill could tell you the exact hook.
Hi, Chris. Thank you.
But yeah, Bill could probably tell you the exact Mustad number, but the Gamakatsu is just what the local Cabela's had when I started tying these. And I've tied these on longer shanks too, if you want a longer body on it, just kind of all depends.
So you say you put this behind something like Bowser or something like that?
Right. So I've used this a couple of different ways. I've thrown it behind a bigger fly like a clouser. If I'm just kind of giving the fish options, I've thrown these in tandem with two of these in a row if there's a lot of shrimp in the water. And I have actually, doubled up that way in the past where you get a couple of specks that'll hit it.
You ever throw it under a popper?
I've yet to try that, but I'm curious about seeing how that works. I have a feeling that would work pretty well. And if it's really, really windy and you just can't use a fly rod, I have definitely cheated and tied this as a trailer behind a soft plastic. And I've had it outfish the soft plastic. Did that during a tournament a couple of years ago. I placed horribly, but every fish I caught came on this, not on the plastic in front of it. But I have also used it to sight fish reds on occasion. I mean, if they're in real shallow water, real spooky, this sets down a lot lighter than a lot of those big heavy redfish flies. So if it comes down to it, you can use it for that. But a lot of times those fish are looking for that big meaty easy meal and just don't care about the splash.
So you throwing this with what, like an 8 weight or something, or?
I fish a 7 weight.
7 weight?
So yeah, I'm a glutton for punishments. I'll throw clousers on my 3 weight, so I'm okay throwing big flies on my 7 weight even too.
I got behind Buying material that I ordered, but didn't check the Zoom and lost track of what fly. You got any, can you look at it and tell me? No, that might be a. Let's
just go over this. This title. Chris, that's cool.
Appreciate it.
Mike was telling us that Matt Bennett is back on his hands.
I did hear that. Yes, he's shutting down his lunchbox program, coming back to work on that. I guess something or other, the farm or it was forestry, what it was. But yeah, I heard he's going to be back in the stand, so that'll be quite interesting. Have somebody of that caliber around. Hopefully do some talking and that kind of stuff.
We tried to get it. We were looking at it if to come when we do a summer session. And they looked at his time.
It's expensive. I know the Red Stick guys have done that before too, like Tim Borski came up 1 year and things like that. Where it's a lot to bring people in from out of town.
Yeah.
And
You know Chris Morris?
know the name, but I haven't.
Yeah, good guy. He's on the
Okay.
He's coming down.
It fishes really well. So I mean, I recommend it if big stuff's not working, downsize it. And the strangest thing I've caught on it was that mullet I mentioned to mix back. I thought I had a little white trout on until I pulled it up onto the sandbar. I don't know what the mullet thought it was, but it ate. It was deep in its mouth.
Yeah.
So that was one of the really the smaller size like this that I brought. I put things where I got close enough to see what they were out in the middle of winter, but they just run with my line. I can't turn them on that separately.
Where do you fish out of?
Grand Island, Pack is probably closer to home, but I've just never gotten used to it. Like I always just head down to the island.
Yeah. I went to South of the
Oh, really?
Yeah.
So you're very you're from really familiar with that area then.
Part of my life. Whole different environment.
It is. I really enjoy it. Appreciate the people down there.
Yeah.
It's just different touch of life, but all good people. So.
Yeah. Our 50th high school reunion was last year. It got shut down.
Oh, no, yeah.
They let us do it this year.
Good.
It's all right. You know, I'll get better.
Oh, it'll catch.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's right.
That's it. Right wind.
Yep.
The translucent balance is perfect.
Goes a long way though when you can say it with confidence.
That's right. That's right. You got confidence, you know. Fly.
Watching those shows. Last night, 10:30 was watching one. This is enough of it. Everybody says the same thing. But they were at Gulf Shore. They were rehabbing their walls and competition. 3 groups of competition. I went to sleep.
When we were in San Antonio, there was some of these house advertisements. You could say seasonal creek. The seasonal creek man was such a flash flood. No good.
Didn't really spread the materials too evenly on that one, unfortunately, but it'll still work. They kind of just layer together after a while.
It looks really good.
Really kind of slim profile when you're stripping it.
When I first moved there,
And
they had one
that
of
size
those-
works in summer, and again, this in winter.
I have trouble minimizing.
You know, it's something I learned really pays dividends sometimes. It surprises me. This one, I'll throw in tandem behind like a size 1 redfish riddling, like nice big leggy bushy thing. And I'll be amazed at the number of high slot reds that will ignore the redfish riddling and hit this. You think you're gonna see the big meal and take it, they skip it over and grab this little thing.
Chris, thank you, I appreciate it.
Pleasure, thank you.
Looks like it's ready to go.
Hopefully, you guys can